Hello everyone, today I'm here with Steve Longi. He's the president of Longitude Entertainment. And Steve, I think that we would like to know a little bit more about you. Can you tell us about yourself before becoming a producer?
I guess, this is it's always been my dream to want to make movies. It kind of started when I was a little kid, and when I was maybe about 10 or 11 years old, I used to make Super 8 films in my backyard. So I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and at that point in time, you couldn't get a video camera. You had to actually get an actual film camera, like a 16 millimeter camera or an 8 millimeter camera. So I had this Super 8 millimeter camera, and I used to get all the kids from the neighborhood. And
How old you were at the time?
I was maybe 10 or 11 years old. So I couldn't drive, so I had to have my mother drive the car, because I had a scene where these two guys drive up to, they're gonna do a robbery, so they have to drive up to this warehouse that they're gonna break into. But the kids were only like 8 or 9 years old. They couldn't drive, obviously. So I had to have my mother get in the car, drive the car up to the warehouse, and then we'd yell cut, and then they would get in the car, the two little kids.
So this is very interesting because you say that you started with the camera, you were using the camera, that you became a producer. So can you describe why producing, and what is the work as a producer?
Well, as it turns out, I wasn't too talented behind the camera. So, when you don't have talent as a writer or director, you have to become a producer. So, so that's what it is, So you do the next best thing, and that's producing. And now I hire people to do the writing and the directing, which I oversee, of course. But that is part of my job, is to develop material. So I work with a lot of writers and filmmakers, and then we bring the director on board a project and work with a lot of directors in that capacity.
Sometimes for the audience, they are not know what is the role of the producer or what they do in the film. Can you describe a regular day as a producer on the set, like for the audience can understand what is your role as you're working as a producer?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because I think people see credits in films and they see a lot of producers, executive producers, associate producers, and it's kind of hard, to really know what any person has done. The most meaningful credit for somebody in my capacity, I'm a creative producer, so I'm finding the projects, developing the material, hiring writers, bringing on directors, putting the entire project together from the very first point all the way to the release of the film. So I'm on board the entire run of the project, and that's the producer credit. So there's also co-producer, which is a similar type of position. There's the line producer, and the line producer is the guy I have to hire to physically make the movie. So he's the guy that's getting the permits, he's renting the equipment, the trailers, he's doing all the physical production of the film. My role is more creative, so I'm working, when I'm on the set of the film, the script's for the most part written, but there are rewrites that are going on during the filming, so I'm overseeing the rewrites. I'm also dealing with the talent, so you'll have the stars who are on the set. So it's a lot of talent relations, just making sure that they're happy, making sure that they're, comfortable in their trailer, and that, generally at that point in time, most of my work has already been done. Most of the creative work has been done. So now when I'm on the set of the film, it's overseeing the production, and there are other things that a producer does on the set as well.
As a producer, what were you looking for in a script? Whether it's a good thing or it's like some issues, they will perhaps be challenging while producing a film.
Yeah, well, I look for those kinds of films, the kinds of films that aren't so easy. Hacksaw Ridge was kind of an unusual story because it's about a guy in World War II who becomes a hero, but he never uses his gun. He does it in a very different way. Desmond Doss was his name. He wanted to serve his country, but he didn't want to go to war and kill people. So he became a medic, and he'd go into they'd send the medics into the front lines of all the battles, and he would tend to the wounded, even American wounded and Japanese wounded. So that was his way of fighting the war. And he wound up winning a Congressional Medal of Honor. I think the only conscientious objector who's won a Congressional Medal of Honor.
Well, I have to say that I watched the film actually yesterday.
Ah.
Okay, so it was very intensive. It was very powerful. I think a man with the never left down its convictions and his
Yes.
beliefs. I think that was very important. And so I wanted to ask you, since the film was based on a true story, do you think that Desmond Doss's actions were portrayed accurately through the movie?
We actually had to hold some stuff back because it was so incredible that we just didn't think, people would believe it. So, the true story had many other things that happened to Desmond that were equally incredible.
I guess I would like to ask you how this movie came to life.
Yeah, well, you asked me before, what I look for in a film, and I do look for those stories that are about something. Okay, so this film, as you stated, is about a man and his convictions, believing in something so strongly that you're just not going to waver in any way. And in the construct of the military, it's very difficult to do because the military is very structured and very regimented. And Desmond Doss came in there and just did it his way. And I just love stories about characters that are unique and different, and stories that are about something much greater, that tell maybe a universal truth that we can all connect to. Sure. It's just really important to have that, I think, in terms of storytelling, and I look for that in the films that I produce.
Well, I would like to ask you a question now that we're talking about that film. Is I noticed that he passed away on 2006.
Yes.
But the film, he was not able to see this film alive. Will you say that he will be okay with everything that was presented to the audience?
I really hope so. We approached it with a lot of integrity. I mean, it was really important. In other films you can take a license, right? And we had to really make sure that it was being told with a lot of integrity, because Desmond was also a very religious gentleman, and you want to be portraying that with the utmost amount of respect, I think. It's also a film for all audiences, so people that may not have the same beliefs that Desmond. You want the film to cross over and be able to speak to people in a more universal way. And I think, that's exactly what Hacksaw Ridge does. You don't necessarily need to be a Seventh-day Adventist, to believe in the kinds of things Desmond believed in. It definitely crosses over, and I think it speaks to a much wider audience. But yeah, I think in how we had to approach the storytelling there, we had to be delicate with what kinds of things we were changing in the story and what kinds of things we wanted to keep the same.
I think that I did some research that the film, it took 15 years to be made.
It did.
Is this true?
It took a long time. Yeah, and this is pretty common in filmmaking. These days things I think happen a little quicker because there's not lots of development going on at the studios. They kind of want to find a script that's already sort of a little further along, that's been developed, that maybe has a director attached, some cast attached. Generally with movie projects, they just kind of take on a life of their own. You bring in sometimes multiple writers to do rewrites, but I think the most important thing is finding the timing. So, because I think what propels films to get made is relevance. And if a film has a relevance to the times, that film is more likely to get made. And I think with Hacksaw Ridge, the timing just wasn't right. We just didn't have the certain combination of elements. We didn't have the right actor, the right director. Sometimes you just have to be patient. You have to wait for the right combination of elements to come along and for the timing sort of in the zeitgeist to be right for the film to really, have that kind of vibration out there for people to connect to the film and to have it really resonate for them. I think, sometimes films get made in the time that they're meant to be made in. So it takes some time for them to, to achieve that relevance, I think.
So aside from Hacksaw Ridge, a wonderful film, like I say, it was amazing to watch that.
Thank you.
And the production, everything, it was, I will watch, it's one film that I will watch it again.
Oh, good.
And so what other films have you produced?
Yeah, so as a creative producer, I usually work on 10 or 20 projects at the same time, because they do take many years sometimes to get made. So you want to have about 10 or 15 projects that you're developing to give you the best chance of being able to make a movie like once a year or once every 2 years, or sometimes you get really lucky, you can make 2 movies in 1 year, which is a little challenging sometimes because a producer wants to be on the set and needs to oversee what's going on. So but I have done that. I have had 2 movies shooting at the same time, so it is possible. But you always want to have kind of a backlog of projects at different stages. So some of those projects you're working with writers developing a screenplay. Some you're trying to find a director for. Other projects you're trying to find financing for. One project that I'm really excited about that I recently just set up is also based on a true story about the first alien abduction. An interracial couple in the early 1960s. They were coming home from a vacation and something really strange and mysterious happened to them. They lost 2 hours of their lives. They didn't know what was going on, couldn't eat or sleep for an entire year. A doctor showed up, had heard about the issues they were having, and this doctor, who was pioneering hypnotherapy techniques at the time, put them under hypnosis, and they both told the most horrific story about being brought aboard an alien spacecraft.
I can imagine.
Yeah, this is a terrifying movie. I call this Jaws with aliens.
Okay.
So this is a true story. It's the Betty and Barney Hill story. And it's actually the first documented story of an alien abduction. And I think these days, with all the news of the government releasing some of these confidential files that they've had on UFOs and things, this movie, I think, is finally coming into its own and is going to be made next year. We're also making offers. We've already made offers to actors, and we're starting to mount the production of the film. But I'm very excited. It was a screenplay that I developed with a really talented director called George Gallo. George wrote Midnight Run, which is a classic film. He's written and directed many other films, but this is a true story that we developed together, and now we're making the film. So that's one project I'm working on, and I tend to like true stories, so I have a lot of other true stories I'm working on. Another project is a true story about a gentleman in the 1960s who, African-American man in Detroit, who was being kind of railroaded by the police on trumped-up charges. They were accusing him of something that he didn't do, and they were going to send him away to prison. They were threatening his family, and to get some attention to his plight, he went and hijacked an airplane. Not the best thing to do, but he was...
I don't think that I want to be in his
No, you don't
shoes.
recommend that. We don't recommend anybody doing that. But he did hijack an airplane, and the story is incredible. He ultimately got attention to his plight, and
Well, I think that we want attention, but not go to that stream. So don't do that.
yeah,
Not
we're not.
recommended.
Yeah, we're just making movies about these subjects. I think that's the best way to get attention.
Yes.
And quite frankly, that's a big thing that drives me in making films, is finding a film that deals with an issue, maybe a social issue, or an issue that maybe we're all dealing with in life.
You read my mind. This is something that I want to ask you. You, as a producer, and being so busy, and I just hear you're working even to 20 projects at the same
Right.
time, right? How do you keep that inspiration going? What is that moves you? You keep fresh. You keep that love.
Yeah,
making
it's. I think that's just something that I've got built inside of me. When I'm passionate about something, I'm like a dog with a bone, shaking its head. I mean, I don't let it go, and that kind of persistence is definitely a marker of a great producer. And I think the kind of passion, with any artist or anybody who's a creator, that passion is inherent, I think, in who I am as a person. And so when I find these projects, it's my passion for them stays elevated for a long period of time. Now, when you find other people who are like-minded, who respond to the projects and are passionate like you are, I think that definitely re-energizes you. And it gets you believing in the project all over again, because you flirt with these projects and then time goes by and you move on to other projects. And even though you're still working on them, Yeah, I think that, that passion can dull over time, but then when you find other people who are equally as passionate about them, it reignites your passion and it just keeps you going. But I think the first thing is having a great project that can elicit that kind of passion, and that's Hacksaw Ridge. That was the most incredible story. Betty and Barney Hill story, to me, that was another incredible true story. And it also happens when I read a great screenplay, that may not be a true story, but just a great piece of writing, that has a voice, an original voice from a writer who has something to say. Because again, I'm looking for projects that have something to say. Because I always say, if you're going to tell a story, there should be a point to it. And not to the extent where you're hitting somebody over the head with a message, or where the message is on the surface, but a story where people can understand it and appreciate it on many different levels. And I think one of the deeper levels is the theme, or what the movie is really about. So in the case of Hacksaw Ridge, it was just about a man who was really holding fast to his convictions. That's just really important, I think, in the storytelling, and really important in keeping that passion alive.
Well, I guess I will ask you then, what is your dream, your ultimate goal? Do you feel that you are in the path to this goal? Or do you feel that you already achieved that dream?
Oh yeah, no, I feel like I barely started, honestly. I mean,
Okay.
I made maybe 13 or 14 films, but I feel like I'm just getting going.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm developing some really amazing projects that I think and I hope will eclipse, the success of Hacksaw Ridge, actually. But yeah, no, I'm always striving to be a better producer. I'm always striving to make better films. I mean, they don't all turn out great. You start with something that you're excited about and passionate about, but they don't always turn out that way. It's just the nature of it. But
talking about that, and I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
if I will mention, but I know that you have a new movie that is being released this year on December 7, 2021.
Yeah,
Can you share a
thank
little
you
bit?
for reminding me. Yeah, so this is a film that's already been completed.
Okay.
We filmed it in Nashville before the pandemic. It's called The Reenactment. It was directed by a really talented young director named Andrew Ford. And Tony Todd of Candyman fame stars in the film. And it's a horror comedy. We just sold distribution. We have North American and worldwide distribution. The film will be released on December 7th, and I'm really excited about it. We just did our first marketing publicity call yesterday, so we're going out with press releases. I'm going to be doing more podcasts and interviews about this film, the reenactment, and yeah, I hope everybody sees it.
Where they can watch it?
Where can they watch it?
Mention some
It's
of them?
yeah.
Or not
So
yet?
this is a streaming film that will not be in theaters, but it will be streaming on all of the major platforms, and then it'll go to pay TV eventually, and it'll be rolled out in all the different.
So well, congratulations and this
Thank you so much.
big film. So for all of you, remember the film is going to be released on December 7, 2021.
2021, December 7th. Yeah. So look out for the reenactment, and yeah, you can download it to own or rent it. Rent the film and see it on any of the platforms.
Well, I would like to ask you this other question, because you just mentioned, this film was kind of made during COVID. So
Yeah.
how did you stay active? How did you stay active during COVID? I mean, we're still in COVID, but how did you stay active as a producer? What
Well,
did you say?
as a creative producer, you're spending a lot of time developing, which means reading screenplays, working with writers on rewrites, attaching talent, creating actor lists. So we do a lot of lists. It's very list driven. So like list of directors, list of actors, list of buyers, places you want to present the project. So when I'm not shooting, I'm usually, in a room alone. It's not real exciting. There's not a lot of people around, but you're usually, in a quiet office or someplace where you can read and focus and create notes and do all that. So COVID doesn't really impact that part of the process so much. Now we're doing meetings via Zoom. were able to be even more productive in COVID because you don't have to like leave your house and go to an office. I always find that travel time, it eats up a lot of time in your day.
So you make it productive, like
absolutely. I mean, I
yes.
think that's
Yeah.
the marker of a producer is to take a negative and turn it into a positive, or always be looking for where the
I
opportunities
love
are.
that. I think that you
Yeah.
completely right on that.
I'm a big believer in this philosophy of creating your own reality, right? Because I feel like we're doing that every minute of the day, because it's not so much what happens to you in life, it's how you react to what's happening to you in life. And how you react is what creates the result. And so I'm always trying to gain that awareness that my reactions to things is ultimately what's going to determine what that thing is, whether it be good or bad. So if I look at COVID and my reaction to that is negative, that's not going to be really helpful. But if I look at that and I say, wait a minute, COVID is an opportunity. It's actually an opportunity, because I look at everything two ways. Because I think in life things are never just one way. I think things are the two opposite ways, and they're colliding. Right? That's what
And
kind
then
of.
you have the power to actually, make it happen.
Yeah, I think that collision creates a third new thing.
Yes.
And that's also a big part of the dramatic structure. You have your protagonist, you have your antagonist, and you have that conflict, and out of that conflict comes something that's either learned or realized, right? Which a lot of times is like the point or the theme of the story. So I think, life works in the same way. It's always these two things. And so there's that thing outside of you, and then there's you. And you control you. Like I always say, control everything that you control, which is your reaction to things, and then let everything else go, right? So it's be passionate about the process and indifferent about the outcome, right? Because you don't control the outcome.
Yes.
So just put all your control in that process. And if you just focus on that, then you will create a much better outcome. So I'm a big believer in that. So I saw COVID, and I see all obstacles as opportunities. I'm always looking for, okay, I see the downside, but it's because everything has a dual nature to it.
Sure.
I'm looking for what's that upside, because that's there too. But we're just not, a lot of times in life, we're just not geared to being able to see the positive. It's cliche, but it's like, all right,
No, I think it's very important for our life, for what we do in the time, because time is short, and we don't know. We should enjoy the now, the present, and make it as positive
Absolutely.
and productive as we can.
Yeah, you got to live in the now, because most people are living in the past. They're like worried about what happened, or they're worried about what's going to happen.
Or maybe to ahead on the future.
Yeah, like they're saying like, oh my God, what
Yeah.
what if I can't do this? What if that goes wrong? And I always say it like this: say, what if that goes right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What if I can do that, right? So
Yeah.
it's just taking that same thing that you're doing. It doesn't require any more energy, and just reframing it in a way that makes a more positive, that allows for a more positive outcome. And I think that's really important as a producer, because getting movies made, like you mentioned, 15 years on Hacksaw Ridge, that's a long time. And hopefully
and perseverance.
Yeah, a lot of perseverance, but it's focusing on being in the moment with the projects and getting them done, and not worrying too much about what's going to happen or not what's happened in the past, but just creating that for the present. Huge believer in that, because it is very challenging to make movies.
Well, thank you for sharing all this, and also I was very excited to meet you in person, because also in one of your interviews, I heard I have a publication, Heart of Hollywood magazine, and to me it's very humble that you accepted to do that interview, okay, because you realize. You pay attention of the magazine, but when I was doing the research on your career and how you started, I find out that you, when you were a young man, you got a subscription for Variety magazine.
Oh yeah, when I was 11 years old. Yeah, I mean, this is, I was just born with this love of making movies, and when I was 11 years old, I had a subscription to Variety, and I had no idea how to read Variety. It's a trade paper, it's not like People magazine or anything like that. It's got its own language, or it used to anyway, and Yeah, I was an 11-year-old kid with a subscription to Variety, the only kid in the neighborhood with a subscription to Variety. So I had to become a movie producer.
Well, for me, that moved my heart a lot, because I was, while I was hearing you, and we all want to motivate people and inspire people, and I think that that's one of the roles as a producer. You put it there for the vision for the audience, and for me, like yourself, when you was a little kid with the subscription of Variety magazine, I wanted someone out there, they think about my magazine, Heart of Hollywood magazine, and
yes,
they have
they'll
the
be
same motivation.
they'll be talking about the Heart of Hollywood magazine that they read and they saw the great interviews you do.
So,
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's the great thing about the media, right? About movies and about books and TV. It's that you can really change things. You can really affect people on an emotional level, and it's so important to come at them emotionally, right? Because you can learn a lesson in school, but it doesn't have the same, it doesn't sink in the same way like a movie does. Like when you see a movie, I mean, that's something you may never forget, right? I think movies can really impact people in a positive way, and that was a big reason why I got involved in making movies, because I really wanted to do something positive for the world, and I saw the power of filmmaking. And that's why I think a lot of the projects, even though I'll make a big dumb movie that doesn't mean anything, just it makes people laugh maybe, I'm all for that. I think that's very positive. But every movie I make doesn't have to have some important message behind it. But I think yeah, if you can use movies to enlighten people, educate people, inspire people, to me that's the sweet spot. Like that's where if you can get all those things, an entertaining film that people can enjoy, but also maybe learn something and take something away, that to me is the greatest movie of all, and the kinds of films I want to keep making.
Wonderful. So I guess now I would like to ask you if you would like to share a message with our Heart of Hollywood audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reading the magazine and watching this interview.
Well, here's my message. So I grew up in a really small town in New Jersey, and so far removed from the film business. I didn't have any relatives in the film business. I mean, I knew nothing about Hollywood. I mean, I was just a dumb kid growing up in the suburbs, right? My parents thought I was crazy. I told them I was going to follow my dreams and I was going to move to California. Didn't know anybody in California, but I did it, and I wasn't even sure what I was doing, to be honest with you, when I was doing it. I remember when I was driving out to California, I stopped in Pennsylvania and I said, wait a minute, what am I doing? I was going to turn around and go back home, but I thought, all right, let me sleep on this, and if I wake up tomorrow morning and I feel good about it, I'll just keep going. And as it turns out, I just kept going. But the thing I would say to people is, and going, yeah, we haven't stopped. But I think, honestly, I was never like a big believer in myself. Like I've always, and I think a lot of people, struggle with this issue, believing if you're worthy, or believing if your ideas are good enough, or if your screenplays that you're writing are good enough. My message is, yes, you're good enough, and you just have to do it, okay? You have to take action. Taking action is the most important thing that you can do, even if it's I always say take imperfect action. Don't wait for all your ducks to be lined up in a row. Just go out there and do it, because you're going to learn. You may fail, you may fall short. We don't like to call it fail. Yeah, many times. But that's, I don't like to refer to that as failure. I like to refer to that as learning, right? Yeah. Gathering information. It's problem solving, because all problem solving is first identifying the problem, and then researching the problem, and then testing solutions to the problem. And you don't even have to solve the problem, or you just have to go out there and start testing solutions. So I would just say, rather than getting up in your own head, which we all do, we spend a lot of time in our own heads, is to try to break out of that and take chances and try things, and don't worry. Just be passionate about the process and just completely indifferent with the outcome. And that's how you're going to grow the most. And you may not succeed at first, but you're going to grow leaps and bounds ahead of all the people that are still at home dreaming about wanting to move to California, dreaming about wanting to write a screenplay, dreaming about to want to do something, but because they themselves are in their way. I always say the greatest obstacle you'll ever face in life is yourself, right? That's your biggest obstacle, is you. Yes. It's not other people. It's not your circumstances. You know, you can rise above any circumstance. I mean, there have been people who are born with all kinds of, you know, money and resources and have done and did nothing with it. And then there are people who are born with very little and they've conquered the world basically.
Well, there's
So
many stories.
many
Proven.
stories about people, yeah, that grew up, you know, either poor or with challenges or different struggles, and they were able to overcome. But they were only able to overcome because they believed in themselves, and they created their new reality. Okay, because they just didn't want to accept the other reality, which is really just your perception anyway.
Well, I think that this is an amazing message that you just share with the audience, and they will take it pressure to the heart, you know.
I hope so.
Yes,
I hope so.
I know, you know,
Yeah.
someone there is going to be able to put those words into work.
That's we want to. I definitely want to inspire
Okay.
people, uplift
So-
and inspire. That's the idea.
Okay, so my last question for you, it will be, what are some of your favorite things to do?
What are my favorite things to do? Well, I love watching movies, especially old films. I love old classic films. I love watching biographies. I love watching anything that's based on a true story. I love history. I watch a lot of shows on the History Channel. And I read a lot of screenplays about true historical events. So I really do, I think, you know, real life, there's nothing more incredible than, you know, what's actually happening in real life. I love the sun. I love the hot weather. So I will sit by a pool and read a screenplay. That was part of the reason why I moved to California, because I grew up in New Jersey and I didn't like
was
freezing
cold.
in the winter, and my dream was to live somewhere where it's warm and sunny. So I chased after my dream. I didn't know how things would turn out. I didn't know anybody in California. I mean, I just packed my car with a whole bunch of stuff and just started driving west. I mean,
And the way to your new journey and adventure.
yeah, I mean, I was really, you know, I just maybe just didn't even know any better. I was 20 years old, but I did it, you know, I didn't look back. But yeah, I love traveling. You know, I love going to, you know, Europe and seeing all the history that's there. And I've been around the United States. I've shot in different places, Louisiana and Michigan, and, you know, all around the States. But yeah, I like going to like museums, art museums. I went to art and music and anything creative.
Well, thank you so much for this interview. It was a pleasure discovering more about you, getting to know you better, and learning about your new projects that are coming up. So I really, really appreciate the time that you've given us today.
Well, I appreciate you talking to me. Thank you so much.